Palm arrived in the Cape with slaves from the East Indies in the late 1600s. It has remained a vibrant part of Cape life ever since. On this rather rainy day in Cape Town, we are off to a traditional Cape Malay home to experience a mirang, a spiritual gathering dating back to the time of the early slaves. Shamila Abbas, who was born and raised in Walmer Estate, is raising her own family here, just a stone's throw away from District 6. She's invited us to spend the day cooking with her for the merang, so that she can share her own knowledge of Cape Malay cooking and history. Shamila gave up her career as a microbiologist to go into the spice and catering industry, and now her delicious halal food is the talk of Cape Town. So she really is the best person to teach Menu and I about the ins and outs of Cape Malay cuisine. Wet day, eh?
Lovely.
Cold. Thank you. Shamila, we're going to be cooking for a meringue, is that right?
Not a meringue, that's a pudding. We're going to cook for a merang.
A merang?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not cooking a traditional meringue pudding, we're cooking a merang,
That's right.
which is a celebratory meal that follows some kind or some form of an Islamic
it would be a religious ceremony that would normally happen on a Sunday morning when everybody is available. And the traditional foods that we normally cooked were the penslava, tamati poetjies.
Stop there for a second.
Penslava.
What's penslava?
That would actually be tripe.
The second is?
The second would be the tamati poetjies, which is also the traditional way the Cape Malays cooked the trotters. The third dish we're going to cook would be the chicken wings with butter beans, and that is also curry based. Right, Paul, I think we should actually start cooking now before our guests arrive. As I said to you, the tripe cooks for a very long time, so you should actually cut them into very thin little strips.
What other parts of offal would be used in a meringue that we're not using?
Not the meringue, that's the pudding.
Gee, I keep on forgetting. In the merang.
Brain is used as a gesmoorde brain.
Gesmoorde brain.
And it is basically treated like an omelette, where you braise the onions with some green chilies and some seasoning, and the brain is added to that. And it actually looks like scrambled egg.
Now, Shamila, I would assume that among the early days in the slaves, there weren't halal butcheries. So was the food that they were cooking halal?
Well, I would say that they would have been halal because the masters were not going to slaughter their own animals. And I mean, the slaves were then involved in slaughtering the animals, cleaning it, cooking the food and preparing everything. So I think the masters didn't realize they were eating halal food.
Well, there's subversion happening in its own an interesting way. So what we've got here is halal tripe, and we're going to be cooking this in water and vinegar.
The vinegar acts as a tenderizer, and you definitely need tenderizer.
To start cooking the penslava, we put in the onion, which we braise.
Yeah.
And while it's braising, why don't you take me through the spices that go into the penslava?
Okay. Let's start off with the garlic and ginger. As I said to you, this is a natural tenderizer. And for a kilo of tripe, you're going to use about that amount, which would be a heaped dessert spoon.
Heaped desserts, or two teaspoons.
Right.
Yeah.
Then 2 teaspoons, well, reasonably level teaspoons of your turmeric, which is also the bori, okay?
Bori.
Known as bori. Then we've got the bay leaves, and the Cape Malay name for bay leaves is the lulieblare. Then a little bit of your whole peppercorns. Not too much of this because we are going to add crushed peppercorns as well. Here you're going to need, well, quite heaped teaspoons, and we've got 2 kilos of tripe that we've cooked, so we're going to use 4 teaspoons of the jeera.
So it would be 2 teaspoons per
2
kilo.
2 teaspoons per kilo, okay? 4 heaped teaspoons of koljana.
It's also called Chinese
parsley.
Menu. Have you got that? Chinese parsley, a new name for dhania leaf.
Go ahead, Paul.
Now we've still got to add our curry powder or blend, and here we are going to be using the Tarkari blend. It's a very good blend because it's a medium curry powder. Okay, because this food is not meant to be hot. So here you only need 2 heaped teaspoons. Then lastly, we're going to be adding the crushed peppercorns, and here you also only need half a teaspoon.
Shamila, you know an extraordinary amount about spices. How come you know so much about spices?
We run a spice wholesale business. But we also run a catering business, and we also, we're always trying out new dishes, and so that is why I enjoy experimenting with the spices. My husband's aunt always says, you can taste when a food is good because it's cooked with love. So if you don't cook with love, don't cook.
And here we've got the spices, an explosion of color that's now going to become an explosion of aroma. Here we have the pence that's been cooking for about 4 or 5 hours.
That's right.
And we're ready to add it to the spices.
To the spices. Now, Paul, as you will notice, the spices have been braised. The onions are nice and pulpy.
It's made a very thick paste.
It's got a nice thick paste. It's well roasted. And now you can add your tripe. And at this stage, you want to put in some salt with your gravy. Otherwise, your gravy would be well flavored, but your tripe won't have enough